And we're back for part two on all things employee retention, employee engagement, and how we can help our high performers plan their careers within our organization so we can retain that talent. Let's jump back in.
Just to follow up on what you said so well, sometimes we need to hire a guide because we want to be better in a certain area or grow in a certain area. And a guide, by definition, is someone who's been there before. So, in those cases, do you hire someone on your own team who would love to give it a try, or do you go out and hire a guide who's done it before?
So let me just sort of take that to the next level. The guide who's been there before versus the person who knows everything, having proven themselves to be in that particular role, but they just haven't fully done it before. I mean, a lot of our coaching engagements are precisely that, where there's a high potential, for example, who's never been in a C-suite before. There's somebody who's a C-level, but they've never been the CEO before. There's somebody in a particular area, and that's our kind of coaching anyway. Rent the brain cells, right? Reduce the risk. Okay, provide that second sort of type of a conversation. Okay, before the person takes a risk that, frankly, without the guide, without the coach, if you will, they wouldn't have made. It's not the coach's job, right? And that's a certain way that you could have your cake and eat it too. I'm so glad you brought that up. I love the concept of the guide, but I think that the guide can show you the way. My experience, and probably a lot of people listening to this, is that most leaders, they just don't know the answer, but they don't know the question rather, but they do know the answer. So as a coach, you're able to say, what if we looked at it this way? Oh, this is what I'm going to do, right? They're not idiots. They know how to lead. So I think that's another way of sort of squaring that circle. And I will say that since we're, where does coaching come? Is that a one-on-one kind of engagement thing, or is it a systemic organizational? I think some organizations don't recognize how powerful it should be. And I'm not talking about a woo-woo coach about teaching people to be more empathetic or assertive or whatever, but exactly what we're talking about, closing that particular gap. So some don't have the mechanism to say, okay, you know what? I think we're going to, it's okay to have a coach. In fact, it's necessary for your success at that next level. And on the one-on-one basis, sometimes I've seen one particular instance where somebody took great exception to actually having a coach. There's nothing wrong here. Why are you putting this person on me? Right? And I think that was the biggest shame because they didn't realize they thought they knew everything. Right? This isn't a punitive thing. It's like let's spread more experience and brain cells around. Right? And it's a great way to say you're so important. We're spending some money on you because we think that you have a future here, and we think that we want to ensure that you're actually going to be successful, right? And I think that you do that enough times with enough people, that impacts the culture of the organization, and that is a huge dividend.
Great response.
Thank you,
Thank
Donald.
you.
I have a question. We talked about having those one-on-ones, saying, what's the career path that you want? How can we help you get there? What do you want to do here? What if the answer is, and you're talking to your manager, I want your job. I want to do what you're doing. I'm the CFO. I want to be the CEO. I'm the CEO. Like, how do we have that conversation?
Oh,
If
wouldn't that be a wonderful conversation? Wouldn't that be a wonderful conversation? And um, there's two types of leaders. Well, there's more than two types, but for the purpose of this, there's two types of leaders. There's leaders who've got self-confidence and want to sort of move up to looking for more challenges themselves. And there's leaders who are weak, okay, and who are afraid. And I think that the ones who are weak and afraid, maybe they've been promoted too high, maybe they've got other issues going on. I don't know. But I think that if it's a strong leader and somebody says, I would love to be able to do your job, okay, it's not like you should never think about it. Somebody's gunning for me. They're going to make me look bad. Okay. Most people who are successful realize that if you could help your boss get what they need, they will help you get what you need. And if somebody said, gee, I'd like to do that, I would say, frankly, okay, if that's what you're interested in, let me put some stuff on your plate. Let's see what we can do to make it a possibility. No promises, but let's see whether you want to do it. Let's see about skilling you up, right? Let's give you some accountabilities that maybe are a bit of a stretch. Okay. Gee, or you cannot be in my role because you do not have a CPA and my role needs to somebody who's a CPA, right? Or everybody who's had my role in the past has always taken a secondment, a 1 or 2 year secondment in this other geography. I know Nestle's for many years. The only way you can get into the senior leadership is if you spent time as a senior leader in another geography than your home. And that's the way you sort of help people spread some of the internal knowledge, the culture, the network, and everything, right? So sometimes you have to say, it's not going to happen until this. Are you prepared, if you really want my job, to actually put in the work? And part of the work might be moving to another country for 2 years or taking over responsibility for this outside of my particular area for a period of time. And if the answer is yes, isn't that the best thing, having a direct report that is so capable that they're willing to put in the time and the effort? It's not a bad thing, right? But that also means that, it's a bit of a social contract. You've got to do what you can to support them, not to frustrate them, right? And that builds loyalty, personal loyalty. That also builds, frankly, loyalty to the organization because it shifts the culture every so much that, gee, we're not keeping you down as manager. We're helping to lift you up. And if I've got a bunch of people who could take my job, that means I'm free to get to my next level because I'll not have to ask my boss. And, your boss is going to say, so who's going to backfill you? Right? And if you say, I don't know, okay, well, by definition, you're not ready to leave, but it's up to you to sort of, it's up to you to do that kind of work. So for the weak boss, okay, for the one who is not interested in doing better, when somebody says that, oftentimes the result is fear. Gee, I got to keep them down. Okay. And if you're working for a boss that is in that kind of area, I think having a bit of a longer conversation to give them the confidence that you're looking for career enrichment. Okay. And you need their help. Is there any way um, that they can help you on this kind of thing? And that just frames it in a little bit of a different way, right? Because it may very well be that, in a family business, if somebody's in charge of a certain part of the business and they're a family member, they may not be budging because, frankly, they may be told this is what you are going to be doing for the rest of your life, right? And that's not fair, but that's kind of what it is. In the smallest businesses, there's only so many roles, right? So it depends on what the business model is. So then the question becomes, okay, can I get more rope? Can I get more responsibilities? Can I, and then the trust grows and you get those. And that's where you get the career enrichment, right? But if somebody says, I want your job, hopefully they'll say it in a little bit better way than just that. But that's a very good sign, so long as they've got the capabilities. And that sort of goes back to what kind of mentorship, what kind of coaching support might you get them? What kind of learning and development are you willing to invest in them? Okay. And how much of your time are you willing to spend and invest beyond some of these third-party ideas?
Very nice, Randall. I want to talk about something that comes, you feel strongly that it's important to show appreciation for everybody on the team and how to actively do that and all the many, many ways to do that you like to sensitize your clients to. So yesterday I bumped into this. 4 to 5 employees complained that they don't feel appreciated enough at work. So whatever that means, we'll take it at face value. And I'm thinking now we're talking about senior people in relationship with other senior people on their team. I am unaware of, Randall, of any template for a one-on-one meeting or any employee like a performance appraisal for senior people that point blank asks, how are you showing appreciation for your team? Like, how are you investing in that?
I haven't seen that either. Okay. I'm sure somebody's going to write in saying, well, my company does that. Okay. And I'm going to guess the reason why that isn't there. So fine. Certainly at the more senior levels, here's the objectives. Okay, here's our strategic goals. Here's your accountabilities and responsibilities. Here's your particular objectives, all tied to those corporate objectives because we need to be aligned in everything, right? And sometimes there's an objective about developing your team, right? And how well you've developed your team, or something very generic, right? Having to do your job as a manager, not just as the leader, if you will. And some organizations, frankly, will do 360-degree reviews where everybody underneath, everybody at the side, different people at the top will all sort of review you and anonymously. And little bits and pieces come out of there as well. But I think it's a great idea, okay, to explicitly call it out. But you're right, it does get left on the side. I wish that I was personally did better. Rania, by the way, okay, I so appreciate you. Thank you very much. Okay, so there's the on-air, very quick appreciation. But I will say here that it costs nothing to recognize somebody's good work. It costs nothing. And we're not saying we're going to give you this big bonus for such and such. It's really the question of actually just acknowledging, something that was really good. I just saw that interaction with the client. That was really, really good. Or, hey, just FYI, I spoke to so and so, like a different leader, and they mentioned to me what a difference your work made to their group or anything. And it doesn't have to be, it could be a little post-it you leave on their desk, right? It could be a little text that you send them saying, excellent piece of analytical work. Or I saw you present at some conference. People were talking about it all day. All these little kinds of things, the informal recognition are quite important, right? The formal, whether it's at one-on-ones, whether it's part of your performance appraisal and everything like that, I think that needs to be there too, right? But there's nothing to stop that appreciation and recognition along the way. I got to say something else, otherwise I'll forget it, which is this. What if you as a manager actually went to your direct reports and said, what are you doing to recognize, to show appreciation for the people that report directly to you,
That's my point.
right? And getting them to do it to the next level. And gee, all of a sudden, you're not just doing it because you should do it, but you're doing it because you now know you have to model the behavior so that they're now doing it down the line. And then you say to them, have them do that to the next level down below there. I mean, you don't need big programs to put this kind of thing in place. It's just a matter of getting in the habit of doing it and seeing the results.
I love it. Okay, I want to talk about boomeranging when employees leave for those greener pastures and then they run back to your arms. Okay. Any like Randall Craig thoughts on this? I don't think you and I have discussed this. Like, would
No, we
you?
haven't. It's
That's
great. Boomerangs are great. And the reason why is because they left for whatever reason. Now, if they got fired, that's a different story for something bad. That's a different story. But somebody leaves, they know the organization, the grass seemingly is greener on the other side. So they go there, and you know what? Turns out that grass isn't as green as they thought. And so they decide to come back. Or they decide for their own career planning that they need some experience outside because, for a longer term employee who's sort of gone up through the organization, you see this in professional services, accounting, consulting, law firms, and engineers, whatever they've sort of gone through there and they say, you know what? I need some client experience. I got to work in the industry for a period of time. And then what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll really understand from from the other side what it's actually like, right? That's another reason for the boomerang. Okay. Um, Sometimes the opportunity, your next opportunity. Oh, I see Kyle in the chat said the exact thing that I was going to say, or the opportunity, pardon me, wasn't available at that time within the organization. Kyle, word for word, exactly what I was going to say. And then you come back and magically it is, but it's not magic. There had to be change and growth in the organization for that spot to open up for you. And by the way, when you come back, you're back with new skills and new network and new relationships, right? And a new perspective. There's an old joke that says, everybody's healthcare, everyone's got their aches and pains and this problem and that problem and everything. And there's a joke of somebody's got these awful things and it's got a one-time chance to sort of swap all the stuff they have for somebody else. And they say, no, no, I'm good with all the yucky stuff that's happening to me because I know it, right? And this is kind of what happens. You go and you come back and you know everything. And you come back and you know what the warts are and you know what the problems are, but you also know, that gee, there's a strong alignment with your values and the organization's culture, right? There's a strong alignment, for example, between um, where your career is going and what the organization can provide. So I love boomerangs, but you're often not going to be going back into the same role as a slightly, it might be going back to another part of the organization. So you would expect, for example, to say, okay, well, why? Or to be asked, I should say, why? And I think from an organization to say, since there's such a huge cost in ramping up people, specifically at the medium and middle and higher seniority levels, if you're able to find somebody to boomerang back, you'll vastly cut your onboarding costs and time. You'll certainly reduce your risk because if they're making the decision to come back, that's a positive decision to come back. And their loyalty to the organization does not start at zero. It starts way higher. So I think it's a very exciting thing. It also sends a certain message saying that, you know what, if you're good enough to come back, we'll consider you, right? It's not, leaving and burning bridges and never to be seen again. It's a win-win when it happens.
I want to talk about exit interviews. I want to hear the Randall Craig speaks on exit interviews and specifically in the context of, how do we air that out? Like, is HR just going to do it so that like, our risks and liabilities we are dealing with that. But like, how do we really create transparency? Like, what if the CEO did every exit interview and that way things aren't pushed under the rug?
So it really depends on the size of the organization. It really does. So, let's just take a step back and say, why do we want to do an exit interview in the first place? Okay, and there's two reasons why. Number one is because we want to learn something that maybe can make a difference in terms of retention, right? And that's kind of important. Gee, the reason why the last number of people have been leaving is because there's been a problem with that fill in the blank. Well, we now have identified that we can fix fill in the blank, whatever it happens to be. So that's one reason why. Another reason why you want to do an exit interview is to uncover, if people do quit the boss, not the organization, to uncover potential problem areas with that particular manager, right? And so the idea of saying, okay, well, we're going to do an exit interview from the CEO who's 5 levels above, 4 levels above, it's likely not going to be an open conversation. If we're going to have it done by a lower level HR person, they're going to be ticking questions off a list, and you'll not get anything of value for either reason as well. So the largest organizations, they have people who are skilled at this kind of thing, right? Sometimes it is not the HR, but it's somebody in the line that's got a certain degree of trust with the individual, so you can actually learn something, right? Sometimes, and by the way, I'm talking about when people voluntarily exit. If somebody's walked out the door, which sadly happens quite a bit, sometimes it's a lot harder to get useful conversations. Sometimes they're going to say all kinds of things just to cause problems. We don't know. So it's different kind of exit interviews in both cases. Um, the smallest organizations, exit interviews are actually kind of tough. And sometimes having them done by a third party outside the organization is even better. Why? Because um, it's a small world. And just by having an outsider ask them the questions, is makes it a little bit easier on the person to be open and honest. And frankly, for that third party, sometimes it's a recruiter, sometimes it's a coach, right? Sometimes it's it's a trusted elder statesman, states person. So harder with small organizations is the way to do it. But the question is, don't ask a question unless you're willing to do something with the answer that you receive, right? And if you're not going to do anything with any of the answers that you're going to receive, doing an exit interview is just performative, and it shouldn't be done, right? What's better though is to say, yeah, let's actually use it because that can make a difference with respect to um, future engagement and certainly retention.
We have here in the chat, Donald said, do people tell the truth in exit interviews? And Kyle added, my experience is that some do and many don't tell the truth.
No, that's exact. I should say yes, correct. But I think sometimes if somebody's got to be in their bonnet, it's good to actually hear what they have to say, right? If there's a couple nodules of truth, it's all like very fluffy and everything's nice, etc. Um, it reminds me of when you're doing an interview with somebody at the very beginning, a reference check, I should say. If you're doing a reference check, if you, as the person calling, say, we're thinking of hiring so and so, and can you tell me what their strengths are? And they tell you, and you say, tell me what are their weaknesses? Not everybody's going to be fully open. Okay, but what if you said, tell me their strengths? We want to make sure we could use them to the best of their ability. That's fine. They tell you that. Then what if you said, we're looking to make an investment in this person with training, perhaps coaching, etc. Where do you think we should make that investment? Is there any particular area that we think that we can make that investment with them? Now, obviously, you actually have to make the investment of the case, but as somebody answering, you're more likely to answer honestly. I think there's ways to frame exit interview questions that actually give you the information that you need, okay, and change the ratio of the BS fluff versus news you can use.
I would also add, Randall, like, what were they like when they worked for you? If they were very, kept their cards close and very political versus if they spoke from their heart and from their sleeve, the whole time. Oh, Donald has the next question here. The same question as me next, Donald, which was talk to me about stay interviews. Like, what is the meta program? Is it really just to be like a love fest? You're just reinforcing the love, or are you trying to unearth like if they really are having feelings of leaving or doubt or discomfort? Like, what are you trying to do?
So for those who don't understand the concept or haven't heard of it, a stay interview is basically where you actually ask somebody, why do you want to stay here? Right? Why do you want to stay here? What are those things that make a difference to you that cause you to say this is a place for me? And there's a whole bunch. You could Google. There's a whole bunch of different stay interview template questions and everything. And I think stay interviews are actually really good. And the reason why, as a leader, it helps you understand what's important longitudinally for your particular staff members, right? So if you understand that factor A, B, and C are really important, okay, and so important, that's why they're staying. Okay, you could say, okay, better not fuss with those things. That's really important. You might not have known that before. Okay, during a stay interview, after you've asked those open-ended questions and got everything, then you can say, I always thought it was such and such. Is this a factor for you? They say, no, don't care. Okay, well, guess what? You now learn something too, right? And I think it's that start of that conversation that's just so powerful, right? And you get a better understanding of why. Now, that's fine with respect to the one-on-one relationship. But as a leader, if you're having that interview with all of your direct reports, right? When it comes to actually hiring for one of your somebody leaves, you're looking for a replacement, or they move to another role, you're looking to a replacement. It helps on the recruiting front too. Because if you understand these are the reasons why people stay, it's likely that somebody who's got those same reasons is going to be successful and will also stay within your organization. I'll also just say one other thing, and this is for the women, which is this. In the past, there was oftentimes a choice that somebody had to make with respect to family versus career. If you wanted to be a C-level such and such, as you had to be a man and it was just so unhealthy, just so unhealthy. And as people go through They're different sort of stages of their career. We're seeing this a little bit with men now too, with paternity leave. Okay, that there's certain things that are very important. Some organizations give a full year of salary top-ups and benefits when somebody's on maternity or perhaps a paternity leave. Okay, that might be one of the reasons why people stay with the organizations because not just the dollars, but because they know in order to recruit and retain, I should say, the best people, they need to make sure that they're using the most progressive ways of choosing what's important, right? And so that's another reason why stay interviews. Because if you could find out that something is important to somebody that is not on the corporate agenda, but is on their agenda, then maybe you could do something about it, right?
A simple line about all of this conversation is you can't grow your business without growing your people and without growing yourself. Lots of business
Yeah.
owners say, oh, my people need to grow, but I'm a perfect piece of finished work just the way I am. I don't need to grow, just my people do. They
Yeah.
I
like the
love it.
first, they don't like the second one so much.
The dynamic that is common is we talk, the gatekeeper, like you don't want to promote your best people because then you're stuck with this gap and who you're going to get. And so you avoid promoting or giving opportunities to people on your team. And like how do we I think about that conversation around the internal promotions versus external hires. Like how can we develop a culture where our leaders develop leaders and we are proud that someone from our team was promoted because we developed them? Like how do we incentivize our managers to stop thinking about gatekeeping and the headache that's produced for them when their best
Sure.
people leave and that they should want people on their team to move up and move around?
So this is a tone from the top kind of issue, in my view. It's a tone from the top. If this is what the CEO, the managing partner, the executive director is all about, let's not move people around, etc. People will choose to move around by themselves. They will choose to leave, right? Or everyone will just be, just working at the very same way, like a factory worker, okay, doing the same thing every day with no growth, and they're just a work unit. And boy, life is easy because they're just doing those little bits of work. So, you have a choice as a leader. You can either develop your people, or they will make a choice to see their next step somewhere else. This does not help. Okay, and for the people that don't, oftentimes they'll just disengage it'll be the Walking Dead, right? And you say, well, how did I get into this problem? It's very simple. You didn't do your work to actually develop them. If you need some more motivation to actually spending time developing all of your people, here's one. Every single person that you promote out or transfer out to another group, people who are successful and have earned it. Every single one of those people will owe you a debt of gratitude. Every one of those people will have a very strong relationship with you because of they reported to you and now they're somewhere else. When they come back and need some help, they'll knock on your door. If you need some help, you need another group to do something, you knock on their door and they'll do it for you. Right? This is very, very powerful. This is the that informal unwired network within every large organization. And if you're just gatekeeping people in that one little area, not only is it bad for you, but it's also bad for the organization. You're not doing anybody any favors by doing that. What you're doing is you're supplanting long-term growth, your own, with short-term comfort, right? Which is convenient. I'll also say this, not everybody is looking for fast career growth. Some people are very happy doing slow career growth. Some people say, I love doing my job. I don't want to do this job up here, right? And having that kind of knowledge of your team, because not everyone's the same, means it's a lot easier for you to say, um, you know, fair is not the same as equal. If this person's looking to grow in a big way because they've got lots of piss and vinegar, this can be very different than somebody else who says, I love to come in and just do that work. It gives me so much satisfaction. I don't want to do all these other things. And the way you have to mentor them as a manager is going to be different. Okay, the person who just always wants to do something, they don't want to move. This is their job for life. Really, really, really. first of all, I'd say make sure that that assumption is actually correct, right? But what they'll need to be successful is different, very different than somebody who's kind of very, very I don't want to say aggressive, but is looking to grow their career. They're carnivorous for knowledge. They're carnivorous for doing that. Are they? And that's where you've got to say, okay, let's actually help them. We're not gatekeeping anyone. And as soon as you start doing that, you're limiting your own growth because, you know, eventually, and by the way, not just limiting your own growth, but frankly, causing a lot of work for you when they eventually do move on.
Randall, I want to talk about promotions, titles, that org chart hierarchy. We see now more and more like flatter org charts, and there's positives to that. But we consistently hear from our clients that there's nowhere for my people to grow. Like like they want more. They've been stuck at the same job. They're doing great work. They're a senior person. They don't want the jobs above them, but they also their consistent job title makes them feel stuck. It doesn't reflect their growth as a person. Like, what would you suggest?
So that is an issue, even for some of the larger organizations, right?
We have clients with a
Somebody
thousand
who,
employees, and they're like, I want a job title change, and I want to change, I want a promotion, but there's nowhere to go.
so let's decouple the actual title, okay, from the responsibilities for a moment. Right? Sometimes, for example, the structure of the organization is here's the CEO, and here's five C-level executives, whether called chief something or senior VP or whatever the title happens to be, right? And that is the title at that particular level. And below that, there might be a whole bunch of VPs, and below that, maybe some directors, etc., right? Or some AVPs, assistant vice presidents. So that has got a particular sort of role, the actual title and the hierarchy. But the responsibilities and accountabilities, two people might be both VPs or chief X officers, okay, but their actual responsibilities might be vastly different in scale. Okay. Gee, very often, the CFO also has all the IT reporting into them, right? Sometimes the CFO is the IT reports into a CTO or CIO, right? Why? Because they need that kind of thing. So very often you take a look at the actual responsibilities, it's very different. And so when somebody's looking for movement at that level, VP, C level, etc. Sometimes it's I want to do more. Sometimes I want more responsibilities. Sometimes it's okay, let me take a break from my role. I've got my number two is going to stand and I'm going to work on the special project. We're working on a new go-to-market for a new division. I've got that thing. I'm going to go there. We'll put somebody else in my role as a tester, as a maintenance person, gives them some responsibility, but I could do the special project. We did some other episodes of this where we talked about how do you, as the chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, chief um, uh, uh, technology officer, CIO, etc. What's the career path for you? From an organizational perspective, the question of how do you keep these most senior people and the level below them engaged is to say, how do we give them more individual experiences so that they have that, you know, more learning, which adds more value. They understand how things are wired together. They build more relationships. If they're going to be given permanently more authority, responsibility, then that's another way to do it. But sometimes the title doesn't change, right? Um, the incredible flat organization. I remember one client a number of years ago. Um, the founder of this company had 250 employees. Every single one of them reported to him. It was a disaster. It was just a disaster. This person had no life. They spent like 22 hours a day literally working because they were like all over the place. People had a million different roles, but they all reported to him. It was a disaster, just a disaster. You could guess what our advice was, right? And so I think that the question of where do you go it can be reframed to be, gee, you're a leader. What's your responsibility to make sure everyone's got some career challenge, some job challenge, that there's enrichment happening, that there is some accountability for some, I used the word experiment before, so you can sort of work through the succession planning angle. Even if you don't sort of officially name it that, you're still testing out people's capabilities. What are they capable of? Right? And I think that's part of the solution.
We figured it all out.
I'm
Anyway,
good.
thank you, Randall, for the conversation. Thank you to everyone who joined and listened in. If any of the issues we talked about resonate with you, if you're considering change and want our perspective, planning a retreat, or curious about coaching, do reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation and share resources. Do be in touch. You can contact us at requests@randallcraig.com or come find us on LinkedIn. Happy to keep in touch, and we'll see you next time.